Hey guys, and welcome back to Dan's Pro Shop, where everything's made up and the instructions don't matter. And that couldn't be any truer today. If you guys have one of these, and I'm betting you probably do if you're watching this, and if you don't, hey, hang around. We're gonna do some possibly interesting stuff. So just sit down, chill for a minute, relax, and watch somebody else do something. So if you guys do have one of these things, you're probably familiar with these cruddy wheels that they come with from the factory. Like, yeah, I mean, it's cool they give you wheels, so at least you have some kind of movement with this thing, but unless you're running this thing in like Walmart parking lot or like a slab of concrete, they're pretty well useless. And in case you didn't know, this thing has an air intake underneath. So, especially if you put this thing in grass, not only will it not move with these crappy little wheels because you're in grass, but you're suffocating the intake of the engine because this thing's sitting down into something. No bueno. So we're gonna upgrade today. Huh? Amazon box. Don't worry, I'll link all this stuff. Check it out. Yeah, we're man sizing here. We are gonna install these things in lieu of these. Stick around and see how we do that. So right out of the gate here, let's go ahead and jack this thing up with the most unsketchy way I can think of. Go ahead and put a deep well socket under there just to hold this thing up. If you guys can see here on the wheels, nothing fancy. Just pop off this hubcap. There's a little missing spot, a little retaining clip, a washer, the whole thing comes out. Let's see if we can't do this quick like. Oh, look at that. And that's quite literally all she wrote for the removal. So here's the plan, Stan. Once we have the factory wheel ripped off, which took all of about 4 seconds, see the stud here that's left over? You measure this guy. This is just a scotch under ½ an inch, which is bloody brilliant for what we're gonna do. This is called a coupling nut. If you guys are unfamiliar, a coupling nut is simply just a regular old hex nut, but extended. These are primarily used for like hanging unistrut and like all thread and different mechanical stuff and running utilities. But this is gonna serve as like an axle hub / mounting thing for what we're gonna do. So like I said before, this is just a smidge under ½ an inch. Conveniently for us, ½ inch thread die. This takes an 1 1/16 socket. We're going to slam this guy down on here and create ½ 13 threads on this axle stub that this will then thread onto. So we're going to start this off by giving a healthy dose of tap magic here. You know, doing any kind of threading work is just like mountain tires. The wetter, the better. Can't have too much lube. So let's see if we can't start this thing on here by hand, just a little bit. Then we'll take our 1 1/16 socket, start driving it home. There, I can tell she got a bite on. And once this thing goes, I mean, bear in mind this isn't going to be perfect, but it's pretty much going to true itself up as it's moving here. Now, also, the other big thing that's probably saving us here is I'm sure that this thing was made in Taiwanese or whatever, so it's probably not the best steel in the world. If we were trying to do this with tool steel or something hard, man, there's no way that this would work. But I tell you what, we got something going here. I didn't actually pay mind to how deep these threads need to go on the axle shaft, but there's no such thing as too much. So we're just going to keep going until I'm happy with it. I'm kind of thinking, you guys saw that like retaining groove at the front? I'm just going until that's totally exposed. So I don't know, what do we got there? let's say, an inch, give or take. I think that's satisfactory. Let's go ahead and back this off and take a look at our brand newly installed threads. Now I know this may be difficult for you guys to see on the screen here, but this actually worked out pretty well. So we're going to take our half 13 coupling nut, slam it on there, and here is the pièce de résistance. Now I have a female half 13 hole here, half 13 bolt. Shove it through the hub here because this is a sleeved bearing. So we can press down on this center part as much as we want to and it's not going to impede the rolling factor of the wheel. Go ahead. Once we get everything all together, this is what we're going to be left with. Alright guys, now we're moved on to the next one here. And if you guys see, I took the threads significantly further down because you see the coupling nut here? With how far I went down on the other one, which we figured was an inch or so, that really left the wheel stick out a lot further than what I was happy with. So if you run this thing all the way down until your die hits this washer here, that really gives you that clean low profile here and gets this wheel as close to the body of the generator as you can. So I like that. We may have to get a shorter bolt because there's now not as much female thread left in the coupling nut, but hey, we can make this work. But keep that in mind. Whenever you're threading your axle here, take it as far down to this stop as you possibly can. That'll give you that real tight profile. So now that we have the threads on the axle shaft all done and we know that the coupler is going to work and the spacing and everything we're happy with, the last thing I really want to do to drive this fact home here is drill a hole through the coupling nut and through the axle shaft and shove a cotter pin in there. That way I know whenever this thing's rattling around and all that, this isn't going to come undone on me and my wheel's going to fall off. So let's head over to the drill press, poke a hole in the coupling nut first to give us a guide, wind this thing on, and then punch the hole the rest of the way through. Alrighty fellas, now we're over here at the press for drilling. Got an 1/8 inch bit here. Just going to secure my hex nut in the vise. And there's really no rhyme or reason to this. Just go ahead and pick somewhere on the last third of this thing, so we're sure that we don't interfere with the bolt that goes in there to hold the wheel on. And I'm only drilling through one side of this. We will finish out the other side once we have everything else put together. But you're going to want something that looks like that. Now we take the side that has the hole in it, wind it back onto our axle stub here. We'll do our best to crank this thing down to where this is in a good location we can hit it with the drill. Right about there looks awesome. So now we have our starting pilot that we can come in here by hand and finish this hole the whole way through and put a cotter pin in. Don't forget your lube to help the medicine go down. Go ahead, get lined up as best you can. Like I said, this isn't a science. We're just kind of going for it. Man, Jiminy Christmas, you can really tell when you go through that axle shaft and hit the other side of the nut, that thing just stops. So let's just come over here to our Cotter Pin Selection here. We're looking for 1/8 inch. That ought to do the trick. Now we got our selected cotter pin. Put it through your freshly bored hole. Bend it over. You guys know how this works. You know, for safety. And in case you guys are wondering, even though we wound this thing down so far, we still have a good 1/2 inch of thread left in here. Okay, it's a little bit under, but there's plenty of meat there to get a bolt into. So now I got me an appropriately sized bolt with a lock washer, and like I said before, this hub is on a bearing. So we can press down as much as we want on this hub and it won't affect this thing rotating. Put our fastener through and crank her down. Of course, be sure to use the right wrench for this, you know, crescent and all. I tell you what, you seen how that kind of got stiff on me on the end there? Not too crazy about that. So, we can actually use the depth of these threads to our advantage. Let me explain. With an appropriately sized fastener, this will only go in so far before it bucks up against the other threads and stops, right? Stay with me. We're going to put the bolt through the hub. Put a flat washer on the other side in between the hub and our new axle shaft. And it just so happens that the stars lined up in this case that this bolt bottoms out right before it starts to compress the bearing. Look how much nicer this is. Yes, the other way will work, but man, I gotta tell you, this is a smooth operator. Well, there you are, fellas. Now you got side A and side 2 all set up. Simply repeat on the other side. Alrighty guys, now we're here on the port side and we're just about wrapping up here. Last thing to do, a little bit of blue Loctite there. Go ahead and crank her down to the point where she doesn't want to play anymore, and you are good to go. Now, one thing I did want to mention, if you guys have this thing, I'm sure you're familiar. This right front wheel or left front, however you want to look at it, it has this stupid wheel lock thing that comes factory on it, and we all know it sucks anyway. Because really, you got this, however heavy this thing is, I don't know, 80, 100 pounds, whatever, and you're trying to stop it with this one wee little plastic wheel. Come on now. So this upgrade will eliminate that functionality. But I think for what we're getting here, I could care less if that stupid little wheel lock worked. I just want to let you guys know and bear that in mind. If you do this, you will lose that. Oh yeah, and in case you're wondering, yeah, this is a battery tender hookup. So next time you have your battery cover open and you're in there doing something, servicing the battery, charging, whatever, get yourself a battery tender, hook it up. All I did was drill a hole through the door and run the wire through the front. So whenever this thing's sitting in the shed or the trailer or whatever it's in storage, plug it in. It'll start next year. And one last thing I wanted to bring up as far as serviceability goes, because I know somebody in the comments is always doing a better job than you are. So I'm anticipating this. You guys know this side cover comes off to give you access to the carburetor and like the oil fill and everything. I promise this upgrade does not hinder your ability to do that. And I'm going to do it here for you in real time. You can still take the side cover off perfectly fine, even though these wheels kind of overlap it. There is enough room in here. There's I don't know, I'd say an inch between the wheel and the body of the generator here. So you still have full access to everything just the way it was. So guys, that about wraps this one up. I don't know about you, but I think this is a solid upgrade. And one of the coolest things about this upgrade is that we didn't really change anything dimensionally. I mean, yeah, we changed some stuff, but if you're the dude that went and bought this thing a week ago and you got that 2-year extended warranty, you know, take it back for whatever reason, whenever, whatever, if you need to return this, you can still put the factory wheels back on because we left the axle studs there. We didn't cut anything, we didn't weld anything. All you need to do is remove that cotter pin, unscrew that coupling nut, put your factory wheels back on, and Bob's your uncle. Take it back to the store, they're none the wiser. But the whole time you have this thing, you have a sweet upgrade. I can't tell you how much this changed this thing, like usability wise. Like now it actually moves. You can use this thing in the outdoor applications for what you probably bought it for. Like I said, that brake thing doesn't work anymore, but come on, man, it sucked to begin with. We all know that. And not to mention the ground clearance that we gained from doing this. I mean, beforehand, you couldn't barely even fit a finger between the bottom of this thing and the ground. Now, We got a solid 3 inches of ground clearance between the bottom of this thing, I mean the belly pan, the bottom, and the ground. I mean, I know this is sitting on the table now, it'll change whenever it's in the dirt and the grass, but there's no way that this could absolutely be worse than what it was. And because the air intake is underneath, this is just like, dude, I can't tell you how stoked I am about doing this. I mean, I've been thinking about it for a long time and I finally just got the motivation to do it. So if you guys are as interested in this particular mod as I am, don't worry, I'm gonna link everything in the description. All the parts, the dye for threading the axles, cotter pins, anything and everything you might need to do this for yourself. So remember, this is Dan's Pro Shop reminding you, friends do not let friends run stock. We'll see you guys next time.